Have you ever heard somebody say that maybe in a threatening manner, you'll go to hell and you'll stay there forever, or you'll burn forever and ever in hell? Is that necessarily true? Is hell eternal? Is hell forever? And when an unsaved person dies and they will go to hell, do they actually stay there for all eternity? And that's the question that I want to answer in today's video. But the short answer is no. You do not go to hell and remain there forever. So hang with me in this teaching today, and we'll discuss why that is not the case. Now we're going to look at two general passages of scripture, and I'll talk a little bit about the background, how we got there, but we don't want to waste a lot of time discussing all of the background. We want to get to the meat of the point so that we can answer the question succinctly. Okay? We get more information about hell from the Gospels than anywhere else in the Bible. So now let's turn to that particular place in Luke chapter 16. Now, we don't want to get into all of the particulars. We know the whole idea of Lazarus being sick, full of sores, laid at the rich man's gate. And the rich man would pass by him daily and never attended to Lazarus or tried to help Lazarus. This was basically an indication of the rich man's salvation state. He wasn't saved. He didn't care about Lazarus, okay? But nevertheless, let's get to the point about hell. So we know that they both died. So now let's get to that point. So let's start at verse number 22, and then we'll deal with those points about hell in particular. Now the poor man died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. Now, so the first thing we see, both men died. Poor man died, who is Lazarus, carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. Upon death, the angels escorted Lazarus' spirit into a place called Abraham's bosom. Both Lazarus and the rich man died, and their respective bodies were buried in the ground. They were buried somewhere, okay? Their physical bodies were buried, but another part of them, their soul, their spirit part, was taken to another place. Lazarus into Abraham's bosom, paradise, and the rich man, it didn't talk about him particularly yet, but we will. Concerning the rich man, and that's who he's talking about, the rich man. In Hades, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and he saw Abraham far away and Lazarus in his bosom. So now the rich man has died, and he is in Hades. And Hades is the same, it's the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew Sheol. Remember earlier I was talking about in the Old Testament how both righteous and unrighteous went into a place called Sheol. Hades is the Greek equivalent of this same idea, Hades, okay? And what we're going to find out is the Sheol that was spoken about in the Old Testament. The Hades, which is the same thing, when we get into the New Testament, is going to give us more information. Remember, the Old Testament just simply said everybody went to Sheol, we know to be Hades. The New Testament, now Jesus is going to teach us, yeah, everybody went, but Sheol or Hades is a unique kind of a place. There is a distinction. There's a difference. There's different sides. So let me say compartments. A compartment to where the righteous will go, and which would be paradise, and a compartment where the unrighteous would go, which would be hell, Gehenna, the burning fire in the subject today. But nevertheless, so in Hades, he lifted up his eyes, but notice where the rich man was, he was being in torment. All right, being in torment. Now that is an interesting phrase because in Greek it is hupakon ein basinoi. That is being, and that is a present tense participle. Now, what's important about the present tense participle here is it stresses continuousness. So he didn't just suffer a little while, then maybe it stopped, and then maybe started back, or just suffered a little while. He suffered on and on and on. And then it said being in torment. The beautiful thing about that word, basenoi, is in the plural. So he was in torments. This gives us the indication that his suffering was magnificent. It was great. And that's basically what the plural is trying to let us see. The suffering was great. All right. Verse number 24. And he cried out and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus so that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool off my tongue. For I am in agony in this flame. So he cries to Father Abraham to ask him permission to send Lazarus so that Lazarus could comfort the rich man by dipping his finger in water to cool his tongue. Okay, so we see that hell is a place of torment. Notice he says, for I am in agony in this flame. That lets us know it is a place that is continually burning. 25. But Abraham said, child, remember that during your life, you receive your good things and likewise Lazarus bad things. But now he is being comforted here and you are in agony. So what does Abraham do? He basically tells him no. And he brings to mind, tells the rich man, bring to mind the lot that each of them had. Lazarus had a difficult life that you didn't try to help with at all. And you had a very blessed life and you offered no help to Lazarus at all. But now the tables are reversed. Lazarus is comforted and you yourself now are suffering a great deal more than Lazarus is. Okay. Both the righteous and unrighteous dead, and that is before the ascension of Christ. I guess I'll bring that up later on. Went into Hades, place of departed spirits, Sheol of the Old Testament. The unrighteous burned in hell. The righteous went into a place of comfort. Continuing Abraham's answer to the rich man. And besides all of this, between us and you, there's a great chasm fixed, so that those who wish to come over from here to you will not be able, and that none may cross over from there to us. Okay, so now I'm going to stop right there. His whole point was, no, can't send him. Why can't I send Lazarus to give you some form of comfort? He said, because there was a great gulf, a chasm that was permanently fixed to divide paradise from burning hell itself. Okay. And so the whole point that I'm stressing here is this. They both went into the same place, paradise and to hell. All right. And there was a gulf that was set in between them. They can see each other. But here is the main driver of what I'm trying to say. In hell, that is the burning hell that Jesus is talking about in this story that he's telling, a true story that he is telling. Notice, here's the key thing. Their bodies were buried and the soul went into hell and the soul was suffering there. Okay. So therefore, hell is a place of suffering for the soul only. The body that was shed, that you once had, it's wherever it is, in the grave, in the sea, or whatever happened to your body. It's wherever it is. Only the soul goes to hell, and only the soul suffers in hell. Okay, now, Revelation chapter 20. This is going to help us with the understanding of this whole issue about the temporary nature of hell. In Revelation chapter 20, and let's start at verse number 11. Okay. Then I saw a great white throne and him who sat upon it, from whose presence earth and heaven fled away, and no place was found for them. So now we have in verse number 11, this is the judgment day, or this is what is called the great white throne judgment. All right. And it talks about a great white throne, and he who is sitting on the throne is Jesus. We learned that from John chapter 5, when Jesus himself said, the Father judges no one. He has committed all judgment to the Son. So therefore, it is Jesus sitting on this white throne. Okay. And it talks about all of the stuff that is happening in the universe. The heaven and earth fled away. And these are cosmic disturbances at the great white throne judgment. But I'm not going to get into all of that. Verse number 12. And here's what's important. And I saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne. And the books were opened. And another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged from the things which were written in the books, according to their deeds. Okay, so now what we see is a resurrection. Notice what it is. It is a resurrection of the dead. But now this dead is the righteous dead. I'm sorry, the unrighteous dead. Making so many goofs on that part. These are the unsaved. So he says in verse number 12, he saw the dead, small and great. And the great and the small just simply means everybody who was dead. And notice the dead now. So that means there is a resurrection standing before God. The books were open. These books, and we're not going to get into great detail, but just simply let you know, are the books of works, about whether they be judged, and the book of life. And finally, we find out that, and the whole issue is, those persons' name will not be written in the book of life. So therefore, they are going to be cast away from God. All right. So now let's go to verse number 13. The sea gave up the dead which were in it. Death and Hades, very important, gave up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every one of them according to their deeds. Now notice, the dead everywhere they are, and that's the whole point of verse number 13. Wherever people's physical bodies were, their bodies were resurrected into immortal bodies, okay? And notice, death and Hades. So let me pause. Remember when the rich man died. Remember what Jesus said? In Hades, the rich man lifted up his eyes. He was in torment and flame. That is the burning hell. So what happens? The people who are in hell itself were resurrected. But you got to remember. So let me bring it back to your mind. Remember, what did it say in Luke 16? When they died, their bodies were buried. And what happened? The soul went into hell. Notice what we see in Revelation 20 and 13. The bodies have been resurrected, and the souls that were in hell have been resurrected and placed into those bodies once again. You see it now? So these people who are in hell are no longer simply in soul form alone. They are now in resurrected, eternal, physical bodies. And that's what 13 is trying to tell us, okay? So death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. And then these people who are now in physical, immortal bodies are now standing at the great white throne judgment before Jesus, being judged. So they ain't going to be judged as souls, spirit creatures. They're going to be judged as physical beings. All right, let's get to the final one. Verse number 14 and 15. I'll say, this is the second death, the lake of fire. That's the end of 14. Second death, lake of fire. So remember when we talked about earlier, the second death has no power. So the lake of fire is the second death. And 15, nailed into the coffin. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. Okay, so let's see what we see. The great white throne judgment is the resurrection of the unrighteous dead. Those unrighteous dead, those bodies, the bodies of those people are resurrected to immortal physical bodies where their souls are pulled from hell itself. Hell, Gehenna, Sheol, as it said, Hades. Remember, hell is a part of Hades. And joined once again with their resurrected physical bodies. And then that immortal body is cast into the lake of fire. So in saying all of that, now let's answer the question. Is hell, as is commonly thought, eternal? The answer is absolutely not. Hell is a place where the soul goes, and the soul is in torment only up until the great white throne judgment, while the physical body remains in the ground or wherever it is. But during the great white throne judgment, hell itself is emptied out. Those people who were in hell are now resurrected to physical, immortal bodies, and therefore will be cast into the lake of fire. Hence, our answer, hell is only temporary. It is the lake of fire that is eternal, and those two things are quite separate.